Welcome, everyone, to Josh's Severe Weather. As you can tell, I am away. We are with the family this week in Myrtle Beach, Springmaid Pier area. So I appreciate you joining me here. We do have some significant weather again to talk about this week. I know, not again, but another significant storm expected to move into the central portion of the country over the next couple of days. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about even more storminess to come after that, some pattern changes. But here's the wild thing. We have something in the tropics that we need to address first and foremost. So I'm going to share my screen with you and just kind of walk you through what we're looking at. And again, nothing to be super excited about at this point, just something to watch. But as always, I do appreciate you joining me. And if you could become a subscriber as well, I would appreciate that as well. All right, so we're going to pop up the screen here. Let me make this bigger. And you can see, forgive me there, you can see that we do now have an area that is not tropical at this point, about 700 miles to the northeast of the islands and about 700 miles southeast of Bermuda, which is starting to take on a little bit of a swirl with it. And at this point, not really expected to develop into anything tropical, but something to watch. Just a 10% chance at this point. You can see the circulation on my screen here. Right now, it is spinning slowly to the northwest. Got a nice little calm ahead with it, but it is surrounded by a lot of dry air. And you do see this major front here just off the east coast. Big trough here swinging through. You can probably see my screen shaking. I am in it in Myrtle Beach. But that system's actually going to pick this one up. So it really has a very small chance of becoming anything tropical. But if it did become subtropical, there is a name on the list that could be used here, Andrea. Again, we're talking a 10% chance of that happening. But it's never too early to talk about the Atlantic hurricane season. It is less than 90 days away. And I'm on the Atlantic Ocean here just to give you a little bit of a preview of the wind that's coming this season. So here are the names on the list. Pretty easy to pronounce the most of them here. I think there's a couple that are a little bit tricky, but I really hope we don't get to Wendy. I think personally this season is probably not going to be quite as bad as last year, but it only takes one storm to be a bad system, to be a bad season as well. So that's all I'm going to talk about in the tropics. Here's a look at our satellite image, and you can see our big system affecting the eastern seaboard, upper level low, moving through the Carolinas here. Finally, we're seeing an end to the major severe weather that we've had. But aside from that, another system to track here, moving into Northern California, just up the coast from the bay here, and that is going to be heading eastward and pulling cold air down with it. And you can see here, temperatures right now are pretty darn warm across the southern United States, 60s, 70s, and 80s, but chilly in the northwest and in the northern plains here. And definitely a colder day as well around the eastern seaboard here. We've got 30s and 40s across much of the Great Lakes. So yesterday we had severe weather. Today temperatures are struggling to get out of the 20s in western Pennsylvania and 40s and 50s across eastern parts of Pennsylvania. And it will get colder as the day wears on. You can see we still have a flash flood watch in effect for northern New York and northern Vermont. That is the deep green here, flood watch. There's some flood warnings as well. And a lot of the country has a red flag warning for low humidity and high fire danger. Central Florida, and then going from central Texas all the way up into South Dakota and Iowa. We are seeing yet another big windstorm getting ready to roll onto the plains here. And unfortunately, that's the last thing the folks that have been affected by wildfires and smoke and wind have really need to hear, in Oklahoma and Texas especially. And in between that area, hiding here in blue, we do have a winter storm watch. And I do think over time we will see winter storm warnings. And it's possible we could see blizzard warnings again in some of these same areas. Out west, we do have winter storm warnings across the mountains of northern Cal, and we have winter weather advisories over intermountain portions of the west as well. Here's a recap of what we had to deal with over the last few days, and you can see almost 1,000 reports of severe weather, 54 tornadoes on Friday and Friday night alone. Many of these, unfortunately, caused a lot of damage. We had fatalities from these. Just a really nasty start to our weekend. And Saturday, the high-risk day, while we didn't see quite as big an area get affected, we definitely had major weather across Mississippi and Alabama that led to fatalities. We even had tornadoes reported in Indiana, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Georgia as well, and portions of Louisiana. And you can see this area right here from near Kentwood, Louisiana, up to close to Meridian was the area that had the worst of the tornadoes. But those in Alabama at night also had nasty storms. And my thoughts and prayers are with everybody here. But the system did not, unfortunately, finish up there. You can see that we did have over 400 reports of severe weather yesterday, especially around western PA, West Virginia, western New York, and eastern Ohio. In fact, a tornado reported outside of Pittsburgh, possibly one near State College as well. And we did have storm damage in the Carolinas and down into Florida, Central Florida. We had tornado warnings yesterday afternoon, evening, and a possible tornado near Elizabeth City overnight at 3 in the morning, which will be investigated as well. Now, we do have an increasing fire danger for tomorrow across West Texas. Again, it's going to be an extreme situation here. And moving beyond that, you can see here things are still expected to be hairy down here in the Southwest over the next coming days as we continue to deal with severe weather. Actually, let me I jumped the gun here. I'm on vacation mode, so give me a little break. But you can see here with our next storm moving out onto the plains, overnight, tomorrow night especially, we do have a marginal risk for severe weather. Not really tornadoes at this point or wind, but some elevated convection that could produce some large hail over eastern Nebraska and Iowa. That's going to be pretty much around and after midnight tomorrow night into the early portion of Wednesday the 19th. Though, as we head to the following day, the area of severe weather does grow significantly, and the same areas that had severe weather back over Friday and Saturday morning are going to be under the gun. Now, I'm happy to say this is not looking like an exact repeat of the last system. In fact, this system is going to be lacking a lot of the moisture that the last system had, but the wind is going to be there, the energy is going to be there, and we certainly do have to be mindful of the potential for severe weather. Beyond that, we have another system to follow here as we get into Sunday. And again, it looks like some of the same areas of the South could be targeted for severe weather. As we take a look here at the machine learning from Colorado State here, MLP is machine learning probability. You can see it's not really a huge outbreak expected from this next system, but it is the same areas under the gun. And we do have a threat for severe weather heading into Wednesday evening over parts of central Arkansas and same areas that have been hit already. In fact, Arkansas had 2 EF4 tornadoes. Possibly one of those got to EF5. We'll have to wait and see what the official rating at the end ends up being. And we've got the threat for some hail here as well. But fortunately, the tornado threat is very limited at this point. Moving on into Wednesday and Wednesday afternoon, you will see that the area of severe weather shifts to the Mississippi River and eastward. The threat for tornadoes, though, is quite a bit lower at this point. So my headline said not again. This will be not again. Okay, it's not a repeat of what we had over the weekend, but it is something we need to be mindful of again, as this is going to be a dynamic storm system. There will be a threat for hail between 5 and 10%, what looks like the best chance over western Illinois, and there will be a threat for damaging winds, primarily over the lower Tennessee Valley. Northern Mississippi has about a 17% chance of seeing a damaging thunderstorm, but that risk goes all the way up in the central and northern portions of Illinois and Indiana, and as far south as central Mississippi once again. Now, looking ahead, we are mindful again of what could happen over the weekend. This is Saturday afternoon and night, a small chance for severe weather in Oklahoma and northeast Texas. But as we go beyond that into Sunday, you will see a growing threat for severe weather here, and a little bit too early to get too specific, but the area of greatest concern is central and southern Arkansas, western Mississippi, northern Louisiana, northeast Texas, southeastern Oklahoma, and even a marginal risk as we get all the way up into Tennessee and Kentucky. So, again, we're going to be dealing with another weekend of severe weather, it looks like, over parts of the mid and deep south, unfortunately. Here's a look at the NAM model for our next storm system, just to kind of show you how things are going to play out in the shorter term here. And you can see it warms up pretty quickly here across the plains. The red lines are advancing north and east, indicating a return flow of moisture. It's not coming in as quickly and as strong as the last system, but with the low pressure deepening into the 980s, this will be yet another dynamic storm system. And by Tuesday night, we're talking about potentially some stronger storms in eastern Nebraska, then Wednesday morning shifting over to heavy snow and possible whiteout conditions over eastern Nebraska, northwest Iowa, southwest Minnesota, and maybe far southeastern South Dakota. And eventually that heads up into Wisconsin and the Lake Superior area. Now, this go around, you can see we have a powerful front. There's going to be a big swing in wind and temperature, but we do not have the moisture that was in play that we had last time. So we're going to talk about the snow potential first. This is the National Weather Service forecast. A few inches in northern Kansas, several inches, maybe 7, 8, 9 in southeastern parts of Minnesota into western Wisconsin. And then into the UP of Michigan, the potential to see as much as 14 inches in the higher terrain here of the UP of Michigan. So this is going to be a pretty big snowstorm here for March over the upper Midwest. But some of our models, like the NAM, are showing heavier amounts here and piling up as much as 18 inches to 24 inches over northwest Iowa and southern Minnesota. So there is potential this system could be stronger than what the official forecast is showing us today. But again, we're just going to have to keep an eye on that. Looking at the moisture return here, though, this is going to look a lot different from the last system. Yes, moisture is surging northward, but it's not nearly as dry behind the system and not nearly as moist ahead of it. It is still, though, moist enough. As you can see, dew points climb into the 50s and lower 60s here in the Mid-South for some severe weather. But again, we're not looking at quite exactly the same setup here. If we look at the upper level pattern, though, I do want to share this with you all here and apologize for my screen, but you can see here another piece of energy looking pretty impressive here with 115 knot winds possible at 500 millibars. Now, the last system had winds over 130 knots, so we're not that far behind here on Wednesday. The difference with this, though, is that we just don't quite have the moisture feed we had last time, and the system is moving a lot more quickly. Instead of getting stuck and generating another piece of energy in the south, you can see it's going to swing through quickly, but we're not done after that. Next weekend, here comes the next one for Saturday night and Sunday. And the pattern, it looks like it's going to try to repeat itself here as we get to the very end of the month of March as well. So we are just at the beginning of what could be a very active spring here, as I think a lot of us expect. If we take a look at storm fuel, this is Cape. You can see it's not nearly as high as the last system, but it is starting to come up again in parts of Mississippi, all the way up into Illinois and maybe southern Wisconsin. But this is a lot more marginal than the situation we had to just deal with over the weekend. So not something to completely dismiss, but something that doesn't concern me nearly as much, if that makes sense to everybody watching. Tornado parameters are also not nearly as high. Remember, we were off the charts in the red and white here. Now we're kind of in the lower end here with primarily yellows. But you can see Wednesday afternoon, evening, western Kentucky, lower portions of Illinois here, maybe northwest Tennessee. It's not a zero chance. But right now, the parameters are not high enough for strong tornadoes, and I don't expect they're going to get that way either. Finally, looking ahead here, we'll wrap this up and look ahead to what's going on after this storm system, because I'm on vacation and I really haven't had a lot of time to get too detailed with you. I'm going to keep this kind of short, but you can see another big system here next weekend. Then take a look at the chillier air that funnels in here at the final week of March. The eastern United States, believe it or not, has another winter storm threat if this is correct. Too early to get too specific, as you can imagine, but you can see this is a really unseasonably chilly push of air that's coming in at the end of the month of March, and another wave that comes in here as well as we head into the beginning of April. So the second portion of the month here could be very interesting. You can see our big storm roars through here Wednesday into Thursday, some leftover snow in the east as we head to the beginning of the weekend, then another wave of cold. And if you look at the northeastern United States next week, there will be snow potential all the way down into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and central and southern portions of New England, and the mountains of North Carolina will see more snow as we get to later next week. So I'm going to wrap it up, but I appreciate everybody's time today. I do want to give honor and glory where everything is due, and that is to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Paul tells the Church of Rome in Romans 5:5 that now hope does not disappoint because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who was given to us. And when I go on vacation, it gives me some time just to kind of put work aside, put things aside that I have to deal with at home, and give me some time with the Lord. And that's why I'm sitting out on the beach. It's to thank God for his majestic creation. I know we don't want to thank God for a lot of other things that happen to us. We want to blame. But God is still good. We are seeing the response to people in the face of these disasters, people coming together in the face of difficult times and helping one another. And that is God at work. And that is the hope that Jesus Christ gives us. It is the ability to serve one another because he has already taken care of us eternally. I want to share that good news with you here today because that's what really matters to me. The weather's cool. Taking trips are cool. Watching tornadoes is exciting, albeit scary for those of you that have to deal with those. But at the end of the day, what's really cool is the hope in Jesus Christ. That's what matters the most. So I'm going to try to get back on here again this week a couple more times. I'm getting blown away here on my balcony, but I appreciate everybody's time. And thank you all so much for following, and more updates to come. God bless you.